Hi, everybody. Welcome to Next in Creator Media. I'm Mike Shields. My guest this week is Aditi Rajvanshi. She's the head of strategy at Portal A. Hey, Aditi, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. This is already going to be a good one. I feel it.
I can tell. Absolutely. I have a bunch of questions for you, but probably good. I should just ask you to maybe give people the 101 who don't know Portal A. What is Portal A? And then we'll talk about lots of stuff.
100%. Let's do it. Well, we've been around for a while. Portal A is a original content company. We are a group of makers who have been in this space for over 13 years at this point.
Which is kind of crazy because there's so many companies have come and gone in that time.
Absolutely. And while I haven't personally been part of the Portal A story for the entirety of that 13, I've been a witness from the bylines for many, many years before Zach and I actually reconnected and decided to, bring me in as the head of strategy. Until that point, I'd still seen the work Portal A was already doing, especially the work around YouTube Rewind. If you remember the era of Rewind and YouTube, then you recognize that work. And it sort of like became ubiquitous with what the YouTube culture was for a really long time. And Portal A has been the mind behind it, the creative might behind it. Today, we are a company that works on premium elevated storytelling for brands. Our goal is to sort of carve out our niche in a space that is, by all measures, exploding in every which way. And our niche is that we're not necessarily your go-to person for all things scaled, but we are your go-to person for anytime you want to do elevated storytelling, anytime you want to make something that feels like a marquee brand property that you want to continue to build on, grow on. We are the team for that.
Right. So I actually want to break down what that means and doesn't mean. But maybe it'd be good to start because you've been in and around digital video in various forms for a while, right? But you were at YouTube for a while. You've been at Portal A for a couple of years. How has the relationship between brands / media buyers and creators evolved over that time? It's probably changed a ton and gone back and forth.
It's changed every which way. And I often think about this question as when we first started out in this space, and I remember back to my YouTube days, one of the things that I remember doing a ton of was these presentations for medium to large businesses around why it's valuable for them to even include creators in their marketing ecosystem, even to bring them in the door.
Just the idea was
just the idea.
New.
Just entertain the idea that a creator could bring you value. And I'm talking like 2012. So this is sort of like definitely feels like another era altogether of where we currently are. So one of the key differences is that no one in this space is having to do having to upsell creators anymore. That is
the evangelization is hopefully done in that part.
And I'm so grateful for that to be behind us because it's the proof's in the pudding. We're no longer having to convince any marketer or any brand of any size about the value that a creator and collaborating with a creator brings to them. The other piece that's shifted is, and it's interconnected, is that brands are today proactively thinking about ways of utilizing the creator ecosystem and really thinking about creators as their own marketing channel that sits within sort of like this gamut of marketing options available to a brand marketer today. But creators by themselves are a clearly defined or a more progressively clearly defined channel today than it has ever been before. And I think the last thing that has shifted is, this somewhere in, and I think about this a lot, where I think we're in the middle ages of the creator ecosystem.
Okay.
I don't think we're sort of like, I don't think we're at the most nascent stage any longer. I think we're sort of like, we've matured a little bit. Maybe we're young adults. Let's put it this way. That zone.
Middle ages sounds better than the dark times of history.
No, thankfully, not the dark era. I meant more like we're in the medium period where we're adults now. We can all sort of like have a conversation around the space and not roll our eyes at everything anymore. And it feels good to have that kind of stability in this space. But that also means, and that's where the last bucket comes for me, that today creators are no longer just a place where brands are looking at them as billboards, where they can just go slap their name and that's about it. And, just have that one
Right. Get
brand
the
mention.
mentions and we're done. We got
Exactly. That's that very transactional nature that we saw for the longest time, to be honest, is truly shifting and has shifted in the last couple of years towards a more sustainable, a more sort of like deeper relationship between brands and creators, where we're talking longer term relationships, where creators are part of their larger content marketing efforts. And to me, that is the shift for the future. That's where I think we're truly going to start seeing growth and evolution outside of all the scaled stuff that, we all know that we do for the sake of business.
So let's dig into that, where we are in adolescence versus maybe where we hope to be. Because like you're right. Over the years, brands were sort of trying to figure out, okay, do we just run a bunch of ads with creators? Do we work with them? Are they part of an extension of our creative? Are they extension of our media plan? Are we doing shows together? What are I don't know if there's one answer there, but where would you like things to go? And what are maybe the pros and cons of different models?
I think for every brand, it is critical to build their own distinct content marketing strategy. And I think for every brand, it is critical to figure out which aspects of their content marketing strategy, of their overall programming, do creators fit in as partners. It is no longer valuable from a long-term perspective, especially as I start thinking about goals around brand loyalty, brand love, all the stuff that brand marketers ultimately are going for, especially on the brand marketing side of things, lesser on the performance marketing side of things. When I think about that whole space that marketers are focused on, it is critical that we are creating room and very intentionally creating room for creators to be part of the content marketing play that brands are building out. I see it play out from serialized content perspective. I see it from the perspective of long-term brand creator relationships, where you see the same creator or the same set of creators almost become ambassadors for a brand because they continue to work with them over and over again and really start shaping the brand's perception for their most engaged audience in a way that no amount of performance marketing can. And so to me, that's the space where I'm seeing the shifts happen. And that's what I want to see more of in the future. Long-term, sustainable creator brand relationships that fit into the overall content marketing plan for a brand.
I want to ask you, when you talk about content marketing, there will be different definitions of that. I think like some brands will see that as, I want to show about my brand. That's branded. It's more like branded content than others. I want to support content about my category. When you use that term, are you talking about brands and creators partnering on a 5-part series on the subject, or are you talking about launching episodics together? Is there a range?
There is definitely a range. So when I'm talking about content marketing, what I'm not talking about is ad units and ad units alone. So if we were to sort of start distinguishing between what is content and what's not, I think of content as inherently being valuable to the viewer. And advertising sometimes, unfortunately, is not. In fact, more often than not, pure ads are.
And sometimes branded content is not. So you got to do it if you don't do it right.
Absolutely. 100% yes. And when I see advertising in the garb of branded content, it truly frustrates me because it feels like we're not quite picking a lane and really making an impact with that work. But to me, content marketing really goes down to this idea of, is it storytelling driven? Is there a core narrative that we're going with? Are we adding value to the viewer? If it is purely promotional, then to me, it is not content. And right. I think that distinction is something that we talk a lot about at Portal A, where we're sort of like constantly thinking about content, not ads. It's part of our DNA. It's part of how we think about our work. And it's how we approach, even when we do make assets that are going to run on paid channels, we have that distinct sort of like lens which we bring, which is a content, not ads lens. And that's helped us really carve out our space over the years.
So we're talking very high level here. Give us some examples. What are some kinds of work you've done with brands that are very content first, that are that feature their messaging but are really valuable to audiences?
Absolutely. And there's so many examples. I'm going to pick a couple from just this year and last, actually. Target is one of our go-to customers that we've worked with. This is a client relationship that Portale has had for over 5 years at this point. We've built some of our most beloved series with Target. So it's a brand that we actually have a ton of love for and a ton of appreciation for what they've sort of empowered us to do, really. One of the examples that comes to mind right off the bat is Teammates of Target. It's a property that we started building out for Target at the start of this year and tied it with the first episode launched in tandem with the Super Bowl. So you can imagine all the things that the Super Bowl brings in terms of advertising. And it's actually one of the few times in a year where even sort of like ads are more creative. And so there's actually like a really high creative bar that you have to meet to be able to sort of even drum up any excitement around anything that you do. And that was the goal that we sort of like set out for ourselves, that we're going to make something that is going to be storytelling driven. So Teammates of Target, the concept at the highest level is, well, you could accompany somebody to a Target and then be waiting in the parking lot while they go in to pick up that one thing. And before you know it, you've spent 30 minutes in the parking lot now just waiting. And so it's a support group for people waiting in the parking lot, which evolves into there's a barbecue happening. It can evolve into a pickleball match. It can evolve into anything that you name it, because we're all in a parking lot. We're all in the shared experience. That's the premise of the show. And it is a collaboration, really close collaboration with 4 creators who originally came up with a concept called Husbands of Target a few years ago and really enjoyed doing that. And so we sort of worked with them to co-develop Teammates of Target and then built this out into a series where we did this for Super Bowl. And the combination or the balance of brand messaging, brand presence, and the comedic intent of the show was, in my own opinion, chef's kiss. It was this balance of where you could actually watch this episode without even thinking that this is branded content.
It was entertaining on its own. It was not.
Absolutely. And you didn't have to be a Target sort of like loyalist to, get behind it. It was actually, it's comedy. It's something, it's the age old comedic sketch that, we all have come to love and enjoy. And that was the format that we really built and developed that on. We did another episode for them, which was around a pickleball partnership that they were doing. And so it sort of continued to become one of those properties where we know that it is something that is not episodic in the sense that the story doesn't sort of like continue one from the other, but it is absolutely something that can be drummed up every time Target's looking for that irreverent comedic sort of creator collaboration. And this is now a property that we can keep going back to. And it's super ownable, like just by design. It's set in a Target parking lot.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's a typical example or not, but I wonder, is that process typical where you have the concept of a show or a series and you find some creators who fit that, or are you sometimes developing that with a particular creator and that's their show? Or does that make sense? Or is there a range in between that?
So we do both. We absolutely come up with scenarios where, in fact, more often than not, is that we are developing the creative and then we're working with the right set of creative partners to bring them in and sort of like really help them make this concept their own. One of the things that we're constantly sort of talking about and very, very clear on is creators need to have a seat on the table. This is no longer a scenario where a brand can sort of unilaterally take decisions around what this content looks and feels like, and for that to still feel right for a creator and their audience. So we absolutely think that this partnership where the creator, the brand, and us are on the same table and really putting our resources and our different perspectives together to make the best piece of content that serves all the different stakeholders involved and really serves the audience at the end of it all. We know this for a fact that you can make a piece of content that brands can get really excited about, but it ultimately does not move the needle if audiences don't get excited
Sure.
about it. So that's where we think having the creator perspective is so valuable, because they can really be advocates for their audience and they understand their audience in a way, in a really intimate way that we don't. So we do both ends of the spectrum, where we develop a creative, bring on the right creators to sort of work with that. At the start of the project, we clearly define what our creator selection criteria is.
Okay.
And so we work with the brand on identifying what are the key traits that they're looking for, what's a priority for them, and really ultimately defining what success looks like for them for this program before we even get started. That process, it's tedious. It takes like a beat to sort of like get all our ducks in a row. But knowing that we have that North Star defined and knowing that we know what success looks like helps guide every decision in the process, from creative to production to talent to launch, all of the other stuff that we're working on.
You mentioned episodic, and there's been attempts at that on YouTube over the years. We've gone back and forth. You see that on TikTok a little bit more, but I don't know if it's the right place. Where are you on episodic content on those platforms, or whether brands should be pushing that?
We are bullish about episodic content. We think we think all platforms are actually ripe for episodic content.
Okay.
So let me tell you why. YouTube many years ago made a switch from views to watch time.
Yep.
It was a very intentional move, and it was to drive time spent on the platform. Every platform, whether it's the TikTok algorithm or the Instagram algorithm, the goal is to increase time spent on the platform. Every platform measures, sort of like looks at different metrics, looks at different indicators to show what kind of content is driving most time spent on the platform. In recent years, in the last couple of years, YouTube has been talking about this metric or this idea, and I'm saying this is an idea because the metric is not publicly available, of viewer satisfaction. The way they're defining viewer satisfaction is a combination of time spent on the platform along with session time. So basically, they're saying, did this piece of content engage the viewer enough to watch it to, as much as possible? And then did it satisfy the viewer enough for them to continue watching more stuff on the platform and continue to prolong their session? So
it's not just time spent in a cumulative fashion. It's that they want to drive those, their version of binging, I guess.
Exactly.
So I think where you're going with this is episodic does lend itself to that. That's pretty interesting.
Exactly. Now, marry that to the idea that with TikTok sort of really becoming the competitor that it has to YouTube over the last couple of years, Shorts is a direct response to that, right?
Right.
We know that Reels is the third player in this mix. Now, if between Shorts and TikTok and Reels, everyone's vying for that short form audience, for that bite-sized audience, one of the things that TikTok has told us is people can spend up to 40 minutes with that short form content. So what is stopping us from saying that short form content cannot become episodic in nature?
Yeah.
Or before you know it, you've actually seen 10 shorts or 10 TikToks because they're all part of this series around, whatever, Lisa comes to mind for whatever you can.
And a lot of people feel like, I don't even know what I did with, I spent so much time on TikTok. I don't know what that time was. That's a lot more satisfying, you would think, following a story or narrative or whatever.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, where brain rot is the word of the year.
Yeah.
That tells you where we are in 2024. So if that's where we are, and that's one of the primary content genres on internet today, that's where we're spending our time. I think there is so much room for brands, especially for brands, to not just blend in, not just fall into the trap of brain rot content and making more stuff that just feeds the algorithm, just like sort of, drives the scroll, but actually build stuff that helps people stop the scroll, that doesn't just,
That's pretty interesting, because that's probably hard for brands to, I want to jump in on those kind of numbers that seem to matter. And maybe that's brain rotty, but I like the cumulative views or whatever it is, but to fight that instinct, because it's probably not a great association for a lot of them.
Oh, yes. It is. I think with brands and over the years, we see this conversation play out in all the different ways. It's I want to have my cake and eat it too. So there is this constant struggle of, we want the metrics, we want the views, we want the virality, we want whatever else.
Yeah.
And even saying virality in 2024 sounds kind of
Yes, it feels incredibly dated.
But that's still a conversation that happens. That is very much something that we've heard even this year. And then you sort of switch to the other side, and you talk about making content that is really premium, really representative of the brand's overall ethos. So at times it feels like those two instincts are at odds with each other.
Yeah.
But here's where we've found success, where we've managed to sort of make the definition of success a little bit more well-rounded, outside of this idea of just top of the funnel metrics like impressions and views. When you stop at those metrics, you're not looking at engagements. You're not looking at retention. You're not looking at number of uniques reached. You're actually not looking at audience sentiment, all of the other stuff that is further down the funnel, but actually moves the needle on brand marketing, on brand affinity, on brand loyalty. We consistently talk about those metrics. We consistently, especially with the kind of robust reporting YouTube has to offer, there is so much color and sort of context that we can bring to the table in terms of returning viewership, in terms of, here's the number of uniques, here's the stuff that your audience continued to watch after watching your video. We can build real narrative today around the power of YouTube content, the power of serialized content, which helps us sort of break away from the idea that this one shiny viewership number is the goal. And that also builds the case for the second half, which is, we get to, you won't get retention if you simply create what everyone else has made. If it's simply a function of falling into the same mold, retention, one of the things that audiences can sniff away like right off the bat is when brands are trying to be like too organic. And there's something so cringe about that. It's something that audiences immediately know. And we are always very clear that if the brand is trying to pretend to be something that they're not, that is going to backfire for anything else well. And so to us, like that really understanding what the brand's language is, what the brand's priorities and messaging is, and then translating that into creative that works for their target audience is our area of specialization. Yeah. And to me, that's where we meet those two sort of like otherwise pretty, polar opposite ends of the spectrum of really high quality content and give me the views. That's how we start.
That's interesting tension. We are talking in mid-December. We don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. Are you and your clients coming up with plan A, B, C, and D to try and cover yourselves? Do you have to proceed as usual? And what do you think is going to happen?
Well, this was a conversation we had with a client yesterday, because there's a piece of content that we're working on. It's actually a really smart program with Lenovo that's going to launch around March, end of March next year.
Yeah.
And TikTok is one of the platforms in the play for us. One of the things that we've consistently done is not be overly dependent on one particular platform. It is something that we talk to. It's something that, even before, totally in my career before, I would always talk to creators about diversification. I would always talk to brands about diversification. And that is an approach we always follow. We are very, very focused on building multi-platform, multi-format approaches and programs that can then sort of succeed, have enough checks and balances where we're not overly dependent on a single platform. And so if a platform for any reason doesn't perform, the entire program
you can make a move. Yeah.
That's not our approach in general. So whether TikTok is there or not come January, whatever, is not going to be is not going to be a hugely detrimental move for
Right.
us. There are no programs where we're that tied to that program alone. I think and I don't want to be in the business of predicting which way we're going to go here, because
we're neither of us are Supreme Court experts, but I'm sure. But I'm curious whether you think the world is going to just move over to, if TikTok's gone tomorrow, does everybody just start using shorts and reels more, or does it go away? I don't know.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is those creators are already using reels and shorts today.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you think about any creator today, there are no longer creators that are single platform creators. I noticed this at VidCon earlier this year. The same creator was on a panel with TikTok, a panel with YouTube, and a panel with Snap. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's happening here? Could they not find multiple creators?
Right.
And I sort of like stopped being sassy about it and thought about why this is happening. And this is because creators are utilizing each of these platforms in different ways. It is no longer a function of TikTok alone would be enough, or YouTube alone.
Or I just put the same stuff everywhere, and they're actually digging in and creating for all, which is
exactly
hard, I would think.
Which is insanely hard, but also sort of really rewarding. They're figuring out where they can experiment and where they're going to bring scale versus where they can really build a community and really build that long-term audience. And knowing that different platforms have different roles to play in their larger careers is such a powerful, sort of empowering space to be as a creator.
Mm-hmm. A couple more questions from me. I mentioned you're an ex-Googler. Where do you, in your mind, the how involved they want to be in brokering creator relationships with brands has, I think, changed over time, and maybe it always goes back and forth. Where do you think things are now? What do you remember that being like over the years?
I think the earliest sort of like years of YouTube and Google and sort of like brand relationships, there was a huge impetus on the YouTube team to drive those relationships. It was in YouTube team's interest to sort of like really make those partnerships happen. The first time we saw Lily Singh and Bethany Moda on billboards in Times Square back in like 2009, I want to say.
Yeah, they were at the upfront all of a sudden. I remember that time.
Exactly. When those first moments happened, there was such a huge impetus to make it happen for those creators, especially for top creators. I think there's still quite a bit of motivation on Google's and YouTube's side, but a few things have shifted. One of the challenges, and I've said this over and over again over the years, is that it is incredibly hard to nurture and grow the middle tier of creators. That is the creator group that, in my opinion, is the one where the largest opportunity sits. And that's the group that is in many ways the most underserved, because they're not at the most nascent sort of time of their career. They've clearly made some bold choices. They've clearly made some commitment here and are invested in making this work. But no platform, not just YouTube, no platform offers that group the kind of support, the kind of hand-holding, the kind of encouragement, the kind of here's
just discoverability for the business community. That's challenging.
Exactly.
That's where you guys come in and others.
That's one of the reasons why we always try and work with creators that are sort of like more emerging and mid-tier in nature. And I think what's happening even now is that the top creators on YouTube, for example, do not need YouTube and Google to broker relationships.
No, they're fine.
Exactly. They're good. So now we're beginning to see YouTube and Google sort of move towards the middle tiers a little bit. And that to me is the shift that I'm noticing.
And they want to get involved a little bit. They want to help facilitate that. Interesting.
Exactly.
One thing I did want to ask you about is moonshots. Can you talk about what's going on there?
100%. Thank you. So I think with moonshots, we're really putting our money where our mouth has been. It's our opportunity to work with a diverse slate of talent, a diverse slate of production partners, and truly experiment and innovate in this space. We believe that premium elevated storytelling is the way to go, is our specific niche. And Moonshots is giving us an opportunity, is really us creating an opportunity to sort of to experiment in that space, to be able to develop new formats and see what sticks. what we've done over the last 2 years is we funded a slate of projects with a really diverse group of creators, such as Third Cultures with Jakey Cho. It is a show that we recently released and we're so proud of it. It sort of like talks about this idea of how, when you think about Italy, you don't think about a huge Chinese community and culture in Italy. But here's Jakey exploring what that third culture is in a state that you don't typically.
That's unexpected.
Exactly. And this show truly came about because we worked with Jakey a couple of years ago on a Target project, actually. And then we've since been in touch, and our head of originals, Jacob Motes, Jacob and Brittany Kagan, our head of talent partnerships, really started talking with Jakey and developing this show together. And we funded it, we produced it. The intention is to sort of see how this format comes together and then what can we build on it. We're already talking about future iterations of this program, of this particular series. And there's many more that we've done this year. We've got Signature Drink with Woo-Talk Kim. We've got Fit Check with Drew Joyner. And next year, we're building out our next slate for Moonshots already. And it's potentially the space that everyone at Portal A is touching in some form at this point, where there is such energy, there's such creative energy, such excitement around being part of this space that is outside of our core branded work, but really our chance to flex our muscles, learn, be in the weeds of making stuff on the daily, and then take all that learning and implement it to our branded work as well, because we think that there is so much overlap between high quality content, immaterial of whether there's a brand involved or not.
Right. So you almost have to invest in that to make it happen. And then you bring the brands along down the road. That's fascinating.
Exactly.
Last thing, you are also a creator yourself. How does that, talk about that. How does that affect or help you with your business, help you give you a different perspective maybe?
I think because I started working with creators at a time where this wasn't even a defined ecosystem, where the creator ecosystem wasn't even a terminology. Yeah. And in so many ways, that those initial years of working with YouTube creators, sort of seeing the wild, wild west of YouTube, truly defined my career path, but also truly defined why I continue to be incredibly passionate about this space. Because I am able to put on a variety of hats, the business hat, having run my own consulting business, the strategy hat in my current role, being able to think like a creator, having worked with multiple creator teams over the years and really been on the programming end, on the actual creative team with them, having done those different roles and sort of like put on those different hats, I think my advantage is being able to think 360 and sort of be able to really think through a situation or a problem from that multiple perspective.
Everybody's thinking, you know how all these different groups are thinking.
And it's been a real advantage. I do think it is one of the reasons why I've had a long-term career in this space that still feels gratifying and challenging, but also really, really rewarding.
Awesome. Well, Adi, it's such a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time here. Let's chat again down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.